Hi, welcome to the class. In this class, we're going to study the law of commercial transactions. And so we're going to start by looking at what is the law of commercial transactions. What do we mean? Well, to understand that, we have to start with the idea of what is the law. If an alien came down to Earth and asked you to explain what is the law, what would you say? Well, essentially, the law is a collection of rules that regulate how we interact with each other. In other words, the law is that system of behavior that we collectively as a society believe is correct. And so anything against the law is outside of that system of rules that regulate how we interact with each other. And if we take it to the next level, the law of commercial transactions consists of the legal rules that govern business dealings. Purchases, sales, promissory notes, secured transactions, all of that is governed by a body of laws. It's governed by legal infrastructure. And understanding this legal infrastructure permits you as future business managers to act strategically. So in this class, we're going to review the rules, that collection of rules that govern our business transactions, our commercial transactions. So let's start with commercial transactions. All commercial transactions have one thing in common. They serve to transmit economic values, such as goods or products and services, from those who want to exchange them, usually for money, but for another value, and to those who need them and are willing to pay that counter value. So if we were to look at a definition of commercial transaction, this is where we would start. Two parties who wish to exchange value. Now, the law of commercial transactions is meant to regulate this exchange of values and to spell out the rights and obligations of each party and to offer remedies if one of the parties breaches its obligations. The commercial law must be an engine for trade. What does this mean? Well, this means that the law should support commercial activity. Again, we as a society have decided that commercial activity is a good thing. And so when we create this system of rules, this behaviors that are acceptable, we look for those behaviors that help to further commercial activity. Commercial transactions law is designed to encourage commercial activity. Now, the law is going to provide the framework for business transactions. If you have ever seen a house being built from scratch, you will know that first, before anything else is done, they will pour a foundation. And then on top of that foundation, they're going to put the framework. Now, this framework is usually ugly 2x4s that are never going to be seen when the house is finished. But it's not, when you see a house, it's not the brick or the stone or the siding that's holding that house up. It is the framework, those 2x4s that lay beneath the house. So the law provides this framework for business transactions. The law also is meant to provide order and predictability because businesses need legal predictability. Whenever a company is looking to invest in a foreign country, for instance, the first thing they will look at is what is the legal environment there. An unpredictable legal climate is unacceptable to business. So our law should be focused on providing predictability. Now, where did this come from? Commercial law derives from the growth of what was called the mercantile economy, the mercantile economy. In the 16th century, the world began to move from a feudal economy based on property land to one of mercantilism. And under mercantilism, wealth is derived from gold and silver, which is to say money and not land. So what does wealth mean in a mercantile system? It means money, gold, and silver. Mercantilism held that a nation's wealth and power were best served by increasing exports, which meant increasing trade. Now, modern commercial law, the law that we will study in this class, is derived from what was called the law of merchants. It was a Latin phrase called lex mercatoria, which is to say this is the law of merchants. Because by the early 16th century, the world understood the importance of the merchant class in generating wealth. Now, when it comes to predictability, merchants faced a variety of different local laws, and thus, rather than submitting to local laws all the time, they created their own set of rules to govern their commercial dealings. This use of the merchant law, the lex mercatoria, provided merchants with a stable body of rules. So if you were doing business as a merchant with a merchant in another country, rather than relying on the domestic law of your own country or the domestic law of the other country, instead we have agreed to be bound by merchant law. And this merchant law provided for the greater flow of commerce. And this merchant law evolved into our present business law. The law that we will study in this class has its roots in the lex mercatoria. Commercial transactions law provides the basis for our society. Thousands of times a day, individuals and businesses enter into these transactions. And underlying each of these thousands and thousands and thousands of transactions is the body of law that we study in this class. That is the framework that is holding up all of those transactions, even though you don't think about it. If you go in to buy a bag of chips at the university store, that's a commercial transaction. And the rules that govern that transaction are not in front of you. You don't think of them, but they are what support that transaction. And collectively, this body of law enables the lifestyles that we now enjoy. We are able to use checks or debit cards or credit cards because we have a body of law that supports the use of those items. We no longer carry cash. Why? Because now we don't need to. Why don't we need to? Because we have a body of law that supports the use of alternatives to cash. So this body of law is going to enable the lifestyle that we enjoy. When you go to buy a car, you don't have to have the full amount of the investment. Why? Because you're going to enter into a transaction with a lender who's going to lend you money in exchange for your promise to repay that money. And then that lender is going to take a security interest in the vehicle so as to protect itself in the event that you don't pay for the vehicle. All of those transactions derive from the law of commercial transactions. So in conclusion, what did we learn today? The law of commercial transactions consists of the legal rules governing business dealings. The law is meant to encourage commercial activity by providing predictability. And finally, merchants have played a special role in the development of commercial law.